Disneyland has announced that they're opening up Buena Vista Street to expand shopping options at downtown Disney, and recently, the president of the Disneyland Resort spoke out with the presidents of other California amusement parks about how they're moving forward now that Governor Newsom has released the theme park reopening guidelines, and we're going to talk about all that in today's video. Hey there, my name's Eric D, and on this channel my hope is always to make your next Disney adventure a little bit more magical with tips and tricks, food reviews, and news. So if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel. But since our last video, where we talked about the reopening guidelines, which was rather depressing because, as you know, they can't open until the yellow tier, the theme park presidents of Disneyland, Universal, Lego, and Knott's Berry Farm all did a press conference together. We're going to talk about that. There was also some very exciting news about Buena Vista Street and also some ominous statements about the annual pass holder program. So we're going to talk about all that. But to help give an overview, I think it's helpful to start with that press conference with the theme park resort presidents. On October 21st, the California Amusement Park and Attraction Association held a virtual press conference, and I just want to share a statement or two from each of the park resort presidents, because I think it helps paint a better picture of what has really been happening behind the scenes between the state and the parks. Karen Irwin from Universal said, "At the heart of it, we don't see the guidelines as based in science or fact. We've proven that we can open and operate our parks safely and responsibly. I also think it's a little bit disingenuous for the state to say they've collaborated with parks on these guidelines, despite being told that we would see reports and feedback following state visits to several of our sites in the last couple of weeks, and we expected those to be used for the basis of our discussion and formulation of rational return to work protocol. That didn't happen. Those reports were never issued, and the guidelines that were released yesterday seem to have ignored, frankly, much of that input." Kurt Stocks, president of Legoland California, said, "The guidelines from the governor is grossly inconsistent with guidelines given to other industries and lacks any scientific basis that can be supported by the California Department of Public Health." Speaking of Legoland's efforts, he said, "As a father of 3 young children, these precautions, from my perspective, take on a very personal meaning. I would feel completely safe bringing my children back to the park with all of the new precautions we have in place in such a controlled environment. If you take a look at similar entertainment venues, such as zoos, museums, aquariums, and family entertainment centers, all have been able to open outdoors and many indoors since Tier 1, without any distinction between the size of the facility. We just want the administration to treat us the same as industries of a very similar nature." The regional vice president of Cedar Fairs, who oversees Knott's Berry Farm, said, "The question I would ask is why are employees at larger parks any less entitled to work than employees at any other facilities? The administration's visit to 3 facilities in California this past week seemed to be just for show. They made no changes to the guidance for the large parks from what we saw 2 weeks ago. We hoped that the visits would be a real beginning of a dialogue between the parks and the administration, with the shared goal of reopening the parks, but instead they proceeded with this plan that will keep our parks closed indefinitely." Then Ken Potrock, president of the Disneyland Resort, spoke about the visit from state officials. "Each of these visits in each of these parks was multi-hours of detailed review, and in fact really looking at not just what we were presenting, but looking at the guests that were in all of our facilities, to see how they were behaving and how our cast members and employees are reinforcing the protocols. So if you saw somebody with a mask that was down below their nose, did they see employees going up to them and telling them the proper function of how to use a mask? Those are the kinds of things that they came away with seeing, and seeing really strong and stringent enforcement of our protocols. And so we, again, came away from that experience going, okay, this is great. They have a much greater and deeper understanding of what we have. They had a couple of suggestions, which is fantastic, you know. We could continue to build our protocols and have a great dialogue around that. But a number of days later, it was no. And now we're announcing and moving forward with this Tier 4 orientation, not taking into account, at least from our perspective, you know, any of the things that they saw other than what they're most concerned about. You'll also remember one of the things the state has talked about a lot is the concern of tourists coming in from out of state or tourists coming in from a further distance, even within the state. That is one of the things they addressed during this press conference. Karen Irwin from Universal said, "You know, that has been a consistent concern that's been expressed by the state. We know for a fact that most of the attendance that we're going to see through the remainder of this year and next year is going to be local. We know that from a lot of research that we've done, as well as what's happening at parks that are open all over the world. And we've pointed that out several times to the state. But I do think that it's important to understand parks in Southern California are not the main reason people visit Southern California. And a lot of what attracts tourists in outer US markets to California is the weather, it's the beaches, it's a lot of things that people are frankly already doing because those businesses are already open. So to say that we would be the primary driver of that visitation, I think is erroneous. And it's really kind of unfair, tagging that on us. The other thing to keep in mind is the locals here, without the parks open, are going somewhere else. They're going to Las Vegas. They're leaving the market to go to other things and enjoy other recreational activities because some of it is not accessible here. Then they're returning to our state. So from a practical standpoint, I don't see how that is better than having them visit locally one of our parks, whereas several of us have already pointed out are very controlled environments and predominantly outdoors. And when asked if they would be taking legal action, the response was, I think that all options are open at this point. We're going to continue to explore our options. Our number one goal is to be allowed to reopen responsibly. Obviously, we would love to keep that conversation going and come up with a reasonable timeline for reopening, but at this point, any options are viable. In the description below, I'll put a link to the full press conference because it's pretty interesting to watch. There is a lot of question and answers where they respond to things, and so that was just a little sample of it. But I think it does give a better idea of, we've been hearing a lot from the governor and what he says about, oh, we're collaborating, oh, there's this negotiation going on, but hearing from them, you see they have very different feelings on that. So once again, I'll put that link down below. One of the questions they received for both Disney and Universal was, would you be willing to open up your parks partially for food or merchandise event? And Disney didn't announce anything official there, but this past Friday on the Disney Parks blog, they did announce that Buena Vista Street would be opening up to expand downtown Disney. This really is good news because it does mean more cast members will be able to be called back to work for those shops and restaurants, and it also means that more room will be expanded for guests to come into downtown Disney. So more guests at one time will be able to be in downtown Disney. So that's good for the guests too. So very exciting there. On the Disney Parks blog, it did say Elias & Company will be open along with several other shops for holiday shopping. And for food options, Trolley Treats, Fiddler Pfeiffer, and Practical Cafe. For extra classy dining, Cartier Circle Lounge says that they'll have extra outdoor seating, so that will allow more guests to enjoy a meal there. And Smoke Jumpers Grill, so that is exciting news. And who would have ever thought that we would be excited about Smoke Jumpers Grill just reopening, but hey, we'll take what we can. So that will begin in November, and for those asking if this will expand to Main Street USA, the Newport Beach Patch had a statement from a Disney spokesperson saying that there are no plans at this time to expand to Main Street USA. So that was the happy news released on Friday, and oftentimes organizations won't release happy news on Friday because they don't want it to get lost in kind of the weekend. But perhaps the reason why Disneyland did release it that day is there was also sad news because that was the day that a number of cast members got their layoff notice. This is according to Workers United Local 50, one of the unions at Disneyland. So while it has been a few weeks since the initial announcement, know that many cast members are still hurting, in limbo, or just finding out now what is happening with their employment. Disneyland annual pass holders began receiving an email kind of updating them on the status of the park, but it also had kind of an ominous line in there. So after giving a brief update on the park remaining closed, it said, while we work to understand the implications of this and determine what it means for our annual passport program, we know that you have many questions, and given the latest guidance from the state, we will have more to share with you on the future of our AP program soon. So you can see how that statement kind of pointing towards the future is a little bit awkward and leaving something there. Of course, I don't know anything specific, and I'm not saying that the AP program is going to be canceled or anything like that in the future, but it is clear they are thinking about how to handle this. And as we've talked about before, one of the things is there is close to, or maybe even more than 1 million annual pass holders. And if they are limited to 25% for a period of time, months and months, that means it could be weeks and weeks and even months before each annual pass holder has a chance to visit the parks once. So when someone is paying to attend the park every day, but they can't get into the park, once, but every other month or every 6 weeks or what have you, that's not quite what the person paid for. So they're probably having to think about, do we pause this program at this time? Do we have to put everyone kind of on hold for a period of time until our reduced capacity is over once we open up again? Recently, actually this past week, we found out that Tokyo Disneyland is pausing their AP program, and so they're doing mass refunds over there. And so my guess is that will reopen again eventually once they can get the capacity back to normal. In California, because the annual pass holder program is so large, they definitely don't want to hurt that crowd. But at the same time, just like at Walt Disney World, where they made big changes to, it's 120 days to reserve reservations at restaurants. Oh no, now it's only 60 days. Oh, you can get fast passes 60 days in advance. Oh, you can't get fast passes at all. I think for the time being, Disneyland is trying to look ahead and see what they need to do to make some changes. So I would love to know in the comments below what changes you think Disney will have to make, at least for the time being, or if you think long-term Disney is going to make some changes to the annual pass holder program. I would love to know your thoughts on that. Also, any thoughts on the press conference by the resort presidents? I thought it was very interesting. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. But thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you found this video informative. If you did, please give it a like, and we will see you all again real soon. Bye.